So, what even is a business, really? When you boil it all down, it's just a simple idea that meets a real human need. But, turning that idea into something real? Wow, that's a journey. It's like a quest, filled with challenges, tools, and a hero at the center of it all, the entrepreneur. So, let's dive into that journey together. It always starts with a little spark. Take Mohammed Kamber Hussein. He was just 17, and he looked around his city, Karachi, and he saw something was missing. You had your fancy, expensive restaurants, and then you had cheap roadside stalls, but there was nothing in between. Nothing that was both affordable and actually welcoming for women. That empty space, that was what he called a gap in the market. And that single realization, that's the starting point for every single business out there. So, in this explainer, we're going to follow that exact journey through 5 key stages. We'll start by setting the stage, figuring out what a business really is. Then we'll meet our hero, the entrepreneur. We'll see what tools they need, face the challenges they're definitely going to encounter, and finally look at the map they use to chart their course. All right, first up, let's set the stage. We're going to explore the fundamental reason any business even exists in the first place. I mean, what happens when a great idea smacks right into a real-world need? A business, in its simplest form, is basically an engine for meeting needs. I mean, think about it. Without businesses, we'd all have to be completely self-sufficient. We'd be growing our own food, making our own clothes, the whole shebang. Businesses are what take those limited resources and transform them into the goods and services that make our lives better. And the process itself sounds almost, deceptively simple. First, you gotta do what Muhammad did. You spot what people actually want or need. Then, you pull together the resources to make it happen. And finally, you produce the stuff that satisfies that original need. It's kind of like a logical 3-step dance. Okay, now let's talk about this little bit of magic called adding value. This is what happens during production. It's basically the difference between what your raw materials cost and the final price you sell your product for. Now, this is crucial. This is not the same as profit. You still got other costs to pay, like wages and rent, before you get to profit. So, how do you actually add value? Well, think about a jewelry shop. The gold and the gems, they have a certain cost, right? But the value gets added through that fancy packaging, the expert staff who help you, the beautiful store. Or think about a candy maker. They add value with awesome branding and using really high-quality ingredients. It's everything you do to make a product more desirable than just the sum of its parts. And this brings us right to the main character in our story, the person who sees the opportunity, who gathers all the resources, and who actually dares to build something from nothing. It's time to meet our hero. We hear the word entrepreneur all the time, but it's really important to know the difference between them and an intrapreneur. An entrepreneur, like Muhammad, creates a brand new business. They take on all the personal financial risk, and because of that, they get the direct rewards. An intrapreneur, on the other hand, acts like an entrepreneur, but they do it inside a company that already exists. A classic example is the Sony employee who came up with the idea for the PlayStation. The company took the risk, and so the company got the rewards. It takes a really special mix of traits to pull this off. Entrepreneurs are innovators. They just see things differently. They have an incredible commitment that gets them through all the tough times, and they often have to be multi-skilled. I mean, they're doing everything from marketing to finance in the beginning, and of course, they have to have the self-confidence to take those big, calculated risks. Okay, so we've got our hero. But every hero needs their tools, right? They need their equipment for the quest. So what are the absolute essential ingredients for building a business? In economics, they call these the 4 factors of production. First, you need land, and that means all natural resources. Then you need labor, the human effort that goes into it. Third is capital, which is all the man-made stuff like machinery and buildings. And last but not least, you need enterprise. That's the entrepreneur themselves, the spark, the organizing force that pulls the other 3 together to create something valuable. So why is this so hard? Well, it all comes down to one single fundamental concept: scarcity. The fact is, we have limited resources, time, money, materials, but our wants as humans are pretty much unlimited. And that tension, that's the core economic problem. It forces every single business to make some really tough choices. And every single choice you make comes with this kind of hidden price tag. It's called opportunity cost.
And it isn't about the money you spend, it's about the value of the next best thing you had to give up because you made that decision.
This is a brilliant way to understand it. Let's say you've saved up just enough money for a new smartphone or a new pair of trainers. You can't have both. If you choose the phone, the trainers you had to say no to, that's your opportunity cost. For a business, it's the same thing, just on a bigger scale, like choosing to build a new factory instead of launching a new marketing campaign. Every decision means leaving another path untaken.
So, you've got your idea, you've got your hero, you've got your tools. Now comes the really hard part, surviving what I like to call the business gauntlet. Because let's be real, every journey has its trials.
No business operates in a nice, neat little bubble. The world out there is constantly changing. New competitors pop up, new technology makes old ways obsolete, and what customers want can shift on a dime. If you stand still, you are absolutely going to fall behind. Success is all about adaptation. You know, success often boils down to really understanding your customers and just running a tight ship. Failure, on the other hand, well, it's often caused by things inside the business. Poor management, running out of cash, or just messy record keeping. But the common thread on both sides is that ability or inability to change and adapt. When you're facing all these challenges, it really helps to separate risk from uncertainty. See, risk is something you can measure, you can anticipate it. For example, you can estimate the chance a new product might fail. But uncertainty, that's completely unpredictable. Think of a natural disaster or a global pandemic. You can't calculate the odds. You can only try to be resilient enough to weather the storm. And for anyone just starting out, man, the barriers can feel massive. Not having enough money is the classic hurdle, of course, but so is going up against huge established competitors. Even just finding a good location that you can afford or building that very first group of loyal customers can be a major, major challenge. So, how in the world does an entrepreneur navigate this gauntlet of challenges and barriers? Well, they need a map. They need a blueprint for the entire journey ahead. And that blueprint is the business plan. But it's so much more than just a document. It's a roadmap. It forces you to think through every single aspect of your venture, from your main goals and strategies to who you're selling to and what your finances look like. It's the tool you use to convince banks and investors that your journey is one worth funding. And a good plan, a really solid one, is comprehensive. It starts with a quick summary. It describes the business and the market you're in. It lays out your marketing and operation strategies. And most importantly, it gives detailed financial forecasts. It basically tells the complete story of the business, from the big vision all the way down to the nuts and bolts. So, we've journeyed all the way from that initial spark of an idea to the blueprint you need to make it real. We've seen that at its very heart, enterprise is about spotting a need and figuring out how to create value. So now that you have the map, I have to ask you, what gap in the market do you see?